more effective at pulling people over to your side. There are a lot of content creators out there right now on the far right who I guarantee you would not be if they had had someone on the center or on the left to have been their friend back when they were out getting red pilled in 2015, 14, 16, whatever. And because they didn't have that person, the only people who were cheering them on were people on the far right, and the only people decrying them were people on the left. They move towards the community. People will always adjust their beliefs to conform to the wishes of the community that they're a part of. So you want to do that. You want to let the left be accommodating to people on the right because it gives them a chance to move over. And you want to give people on the right the opportunity to be able to come over, because otherwise they're going to be locked into a social group that will never let them change their mind.
I hate the fact that the right is so effective at doing that too. Like, it feels like it's way more common, and this might just be a feeling, maybe I'm wrong on the data, but it feels like it's way more common that you hear that, like, I used to be a liberal and now I'm on the right, blah, 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 or I used to be far left and now I'm a quote unquote liberal. But that's because it seems like the right is like very accepting of converts. It's like, oh shit, like you think that ideology is dog shit, you want to come join us? Then fucking A, dude, come on. I don't care if you were literally a communist yesterday. Like, if you've got a story about how you left the left, then come on and be cool. Whereas like
never
left
purity test.
Yeah, left-leaning people.
Anybody, just come all.
Oh my God, dude. People will find tweets of you saying like, I don't know about Stalin and from like 2002, and they will destroy you over it. It's like, oh my God, like the difference is unbelievable.
So this is my biggest issue, right? True. Sorry, like this comes from like having a left-centric fucking viewpoint and only seeing the kind of like quote unquote cancel culture that goes on within the left. But like while you're correct that in the broader right, like most people can kind of move over, once you get further and deeper into the right, there is cancel culture fucking galore. Buddy, there are like schisms between fucking Christians and fucking pagans and fucking Nazis and fucking
the only time someone gets canceled on the right is for like pedophilia. That's the only thing that I could think of, right?
The critical point though, that obsession, the entry, you know?
Hold on, 1 second. Eris, please, go ahead.
So, okay, like, this is what I'm talking about, though. Like, the obsession with the left eating its own is really, really toxic, and it's hypocritical more than anything, right? Like, the moral purity that's rampant, like, on the left is just so much like the religious right. And I don't know why the left is always against retributive justice when you're talking about criminals, right?
Always
or prison.
For it, yeah.
But, and then like, but unless you do wrong thing, right? Then boom, they love retribution, and like that's just
It is about retribution.
Retribution is about quarantining the fucking.
If that was true, then it wouldn't happen so often.
I don't think that's
the critical distinction is that the gatekeeping happens at the beginning of the left, whereas on the right, the gatekeeping takes place in the far right. By the time you're reaching like people arguing over whether or not Nick Fuentes is white enough to really be a neo-Nazi, you're already so deep into the right that you're not going to get bumped out of it.
No, I think the gatekeeping.
Yeah, exactly.
We just have different fucking standards. Like the gatekeeping happens at the entry.
The standards on the left are stupid, though. That's the problem. The standards are garbage. They're dog shit. They're dog shit standards.
Let's just look at someone like ContraPoints, right?
Who's been canceled by the left like 3 times.
Like, look at ContraPoints, who has contributed like so much good, right? How many people has she converted? Has she changed people's minds? And then boom, she gets completely bullied, right, off of YouTube for a really long time because of the way she got treated by the left. So like, what is the stuff that
because of like woke school?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Like, how is that okay? Like, and I've seen that defended. There's so many leftists I've met where it's like, well, she said this vile thing and this vile thing. But it's like, does it deserve that? Like, holy shit.
This reminds me of we had a conversation once on this panel that this reminds me of, where people were talking about oh god, fuck, I just lost it. I'm sorry, forget it.
You get that.
To be clear, there is some canceling on the right. I remember Megyn Kelly, she got canceled for coming out as like as pro-choice, and I remember she like lost her job and stuff like that. The thing is, the reason why we typically would look at like deplatforming on the left and say that it's so much more severe or so much more commonly occurring is because typically these kind of conversation, political discourse, such that there would be something to cancel, happens a lot more broadly on the left, right? Like Twitter and all these other companies are leaning more left, which is obviously a more left-leaning space, and there does seem to be a lot more bullying if you speak out against those things, because that's the most prevalent thing. And that's just a common occurrence. Now, when you look at the right, like they would cancel people if they were in positions of power or if they were speaking on their platform.
I don't think that's true, Fanatic.
For example, if you were to go onto Parler or something, things like that, yeah, you would get canceled pretty hard.
They would let you on there. That's not true, though.
No, so they would let you on, but then there would be some insane decrying. It's just that, again, most of the time they don't have the positions of power to be able to quote unquote cancel you, but there would be some obviously overt ostracism and like demonization of the person for speaking of you that counters to the other. The only difference here between the left is that we're like now coming to a point of literal deplatforming in the sense that we're removing your ability to post anymore.
I don't think it necessarily right now it has to do with necessarily like deplatforming. It's more like who we decide to deplatform. I think is like kind of the central disagreement. I remember, so the other conversation we were having was it had to do with representation. That's what it was. And it was mind-blowing to me. It feels like when you talk to like white nationalists and Nazis that when it comes to representation, they will take literally whatever the fuck they can get because they don't give a fuck as long as it gets them even marginally closer to like whatever like white nationalist shit you got. A really good example of this was Donald Trump. There were a lot of alt-righters that like didn't really, because Donald Trump is not like a white nationalist. For whatever you think of him, he just isn't that kind of person. But there were a lot of alt-righters that saw him as like, oh, you know, this guy's a useful tool. You know, it's really funny that he unintentionally makes like a lot of great arguments that white nationalists really like. You know, banning strategically. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And it seems like and people on the right are so much more strategic about who they support. And then meanwhile on the left, people will argue that like we need to delete like fucking Pocahontas from everything because it's too offensive. And it's like Joe Biden is like a literal fucking Hitler. And it's like, oh my God, like I guess maybe I've spent so much time in right-leaning communities where they are so crafty and they're so strategic about who they support, but on the left, people will just like cancel you over the or not cancel, but they hate you over the smallest fucking thing.
Okay, one time. Go ahead, Vivian.
The further you go into the left, the more I would say responsible people get with their fucking platforming. It's when you're fucking talking about like the vast majority of people you would consider to be vaguely on the left, right? Like liberals or Democrat voters in the United States who like basically will just fucking champ at the bit to like cancel fucking anything for like almost any infraction. You're absolutely right. Like at the fucking entry level to the left, there's a real fucking problem with extremely frivolous attempts to deplatform.
I think with the distinction is social spaces versus advocacy spaces. I feel like a lot of people on the left, they only want people to be added to the left if they could be friends with them. It can't just be that they have shared political goals or that they're traveling in the same direction or there's some kind of broader ideological objective they're trying to achieve. They have to be comfy. They have to be someone they could be friends with. But that's not how political movements work. You can hate people that you are political allies with. You can find them uncomfortable in certain respects. You can find them problematic. But if they're pushing in the same direction, that's what does it for you. And the ubiquity with which the left will frequently like firing squad its way out of any situation. There are like viral tweets every single day on the left that the message of which is akin to effectively, if you're a white guy, you're not going to be treated well in the left. That's like the underlying message of a significant number of viral tweets and general sentiments that come out of these communities. Often they're being posted by white guys. But the message is like, hey, you know, if you're one of these things, you should like shut up and listen to other people, you know? If you're one of these groups, are you really surprised that we're suspicious of you? And when like these attitudes, I understand there's an academic space where you can qualify these ideas, there's some legitimacy there, but if you're trying to build a public movement, my God, I mean, do you really think we're going to get a red army out of like obsessive Twitter gatekeeping? You're not going to get it like that. You need to at least put the gates a little further back from the front, you know?
An example of that, I remember.
I don't want to reintegrate the Vanguard back into the means of production. I'm not a tanky. I don't want a fucking red army. All right.
Okay, it was a euphemism. I mean a popular political movement.
Hold on.
Like fucking idiots on Twitter and shit are fucking idiots on Twitter and trying to communicate complicated academic discussions about like responsible platforming, about like critical race theory and race relations and so on. Like that shit, they take it in really, really fucking stupid directions, and like they shouldn't. I don't know what you want me to say. I'm not advocating.
No, I'm just saying like we can work on that.
What I'm confused at.
Yeah,
what I'm confused about though is that like I actually agree with you, right? That a lot of things should be deplatformed. I believe in that concept, at least in certain instances, right? It's just, I guess like the way I've seen you do it, like you're talking about like this Twitter left as if it's like such a far thing, but I feel like you've participated in that in the past, right? Like, I mean, even the other, like a few weeks ago when I was talking to you about being put on a unicorn riot list, right? you like defended it because I was like Nazi adjacent or something, or I was like Nazi adjacent to someone who's Nazi adjacent.
Because you were talking about it as a list, like some kind of fucking hit list that you were going to get some kind of like really horrible shit happen to you from, when actually all that was happening is people who investigate extremism were fucking drawing up like a list of contacts between like essentially Doobie's server, which has contacts to like actual fucking extremist groups and shit, and the other kind of contacts that server had, and you happened to be in that sphere, and you reached out to them, and you went,
so I'm adjacent to someone who's adjacent, who's adjacent to someone who's adjacent,
and nothing happened. It was like a fucking investigative thing, as far as I can work out. It was just like
death threats from tankies all the time.
Happens to be friends with somebody who happens to be friends with a lot of fucking Nazis. Are they maybe a Nazi? We don't know. Let's have a look. And then they looked, they found out you weren't, and everything was fine.
I think I would really love to draw. I'm going to bring up one example. I'm sorry, it's going to trick the fuck out of you people, but maybe we can just go off the main space topic. Okay, but a really good example of this is, okay, so for Kyle Rittenhouse, now regardless of whether you think he was good or bad or anything, right? I think everybody here agrees he's stupid or whatever. One of the really weird things that I saw that's in line with this form of thinking is people were saying like, oh, Rittenhouse was a Nazi. And that was an interesting claim to me. So I go and look it up. And the way that we arrive at that claim that Rittenhouse was a Nazi was that in the group of all the people that showed up to counter protest that day, one of the people in all of the counter protests also shared memes that were probably Nazi memes. But like through that one person, every single counter protester there became a Nazi. Like that kind of stuff, that type of association, which sounds similar to the Eris thing.
We've only been more charitable. He could be with us on the left right now.
No, hold on. No.
So like, okay, wait, real quick. So like that kind of like meme right there. So it's like really nice to like pay lip service to whatever, but like it doesn't count if you only want to be nice to like the most obvious people or the most obvious targets. Like the problem is you have to extend it like a little bit farther too. And the inability for us to recognize the difference between like a Nazi and like a fucking conservative is one of the cringiest fucking things in the world to me. When somebody says, and I know there are at least two people on the, well, but you just made a joke about it, right? When people say shit like, when people say shit like Blue Lives Matter equals white nationalist or Nazi, it's like, okay, oh my God, like where the fuck is the conversation going?
Well, sure, but hold on. Okay, first off, you have to. I feel like you're like saying that this thing was happening, but you can't say how pervasive that idea was. It's not like everyone believed that Rittenhouse was a Nazi.
There were multiple 10,000 plus like tweets about it.
Been a fringe of a
there were a
case.
lot of people calling Kyle Rittenhouse a Nazi.
Sure, there were. There probably were on Twitter. That's as fringe as a position as some of the other nonsensical positions. Like that's the problem when we started getting into these conversations. Is there's no way of actually quantifying this. It's not like there's Pew Research being done on Twitter to be able to determine what the outcome of these things. And then furthermore, like, and then also, I do think that there is when you start recognizing how consistent there has been the presence of specific white nationalism with or Nazis, actual Nazis within different police departments, such like when we had the Rampart division that was completely like taken apart because of the fact that they had so much overt racism, or when we find out that they're using literal black, they're literally using black faces as target practice in different police precincts in Florida, or when you find out that there are actual recruits of KKK members within police, such that there's a significant number that the FBI needs to start talking about the fact that there's a significant presence there and that's in their reports. So I think the idea that when people start saying Blue Lives Matter, which is not all police officers, but that it starts to be like this idea that the people that literally feel the need to oppose Black Lives Matter, which is not the organization but the movement, when you find the people with the need to oppose that you would start coming to the conclusion that these people, like typically the people that are not just neutral but staunchly opposed to this, would probably be more likely to be akin to some of these other groups. I'm not going to make the statement that anyone that says that phrase is automatically a Nazi. I think that's ridiculous, but I don't think that's probably the argument that people are saying in the first place. I think that's a misrepresentation.
You just have to be careful with the label, because if we go nuclear with every label, then I think like a third of the American population is a neo-Nazi, and at that point it doesn't mean anything to the people we're trying to dissuade.
I would bet so much money that over 80% of online leftists can't define what a fascist is.
This is why people need to engage much better with fucking extremist researchers and anti-fascists who do this sort of fucking shit for a living. Because a lot of us are very, very, very fucking specific about the words that we use when we refer to certain people. Like when an anti-fascist is compiling a docs, they will have a ridiculous amount of fucking information to back up the accusations, that this person is like a Nazi, a white nationalist, a fascist, whatever fucking word they choose.
What do you mean by do for a living?
Sorry?
Dox people for a living?
What do you mean by do for a living?
do as a vocation, whatever. The people who have been
like, are they getting paid for this? Like, who gets to put them? Like, who puts these people in those positions of power?
Let me hear the answer. There are extremist researchers who do this shit for a living, right? Who basically work as journalists, right? Reporting and researching on the far right. They might be involved in like non-profit organizations, etc. Right? And then there are like activists who do it like more as a vocation, don't necessarily make much money out of doing it, right? They literally just do it because that's the work that they feel they need to do in order to keep people safe. So yeah, it's like a dichotomy, right? But like a lot of them have many fucking years of experience in the field, right? And I think that like the problem is when these things get communicated to people. So for example, like I say quite often, QAnon is a neo-Nazi death cult. Right? I say that when I want to be fucking provocative. Now, if that gets filtered down to like your average fucking Tumblrite, they're gonna go, anybody waving a fucking Q flag is a Nazi, right? Which is not what we're fucking saying. We're saying that the core of the fucking ideology rests upon a neo-Nazi conspiracy theory and a millenarianist apocalypticism, right? That means that the nomiker of fucking neo-Nazi death cult is appropriate for the ideology of this movement, but it doesn't mean that absolutely everybody who's like involved in the fucking movement is a neo-Nazi. And just like with Blue Lives Matter, right? Blue Lives Matter being the fucking paradoxical statement to Black Lives Matter, right? In support of police who have been like fired from their fucking jobs or denigrated for like police brutality against black people, or even housing fucking neo-Nazi gangs within their sheriff's
It's
departments.
not what Blue Lives Matter means.
I know there are some lefties who are proportional about this, but like
majority of people who follow it. Right?
Did anyone see that Twitter thread where this one girl?
One second.
Blue Lives Matter is a Nazi. It just wouldn't, right? Even though at its fucking core there is a lot of fucking white nationalist ideology alongside it.
You have to treat the Blue Lives Matter the same you would the Black Lives Matter though. Hold on. Let me finish. Jesus fuck. I'm sorry. Christ, let me finish. In that, a lot of people will try to demean Black Lives Matter by pointing to 2 or 3 of the most radical people and saying that's what all of Black Lives Matter is, right? You would never accept that though, and the correct response is BLM is literally just a label. It is a decentralized thing. There is no official BLM movement. Anybody can do it. And if you point to 2 or 3 extremists and try to say like all of Black Lives Matter is like some black separatist Nation of Islam group, that's absurd. Don't do it. It's horrible to do that. Then it's the same thing with Blue Lives Matter. There probably are some fucking Nazis or whatever that are in the Blue Lives Matter group. There's also just a lot of dumb fuck conservatives that like police officers because newsflash, most Americans still have a favorable view of the police. There's a lot of like
exactly what I'm saying.
Gotcha. Okay.
No, hold on.
That's exactly my problem.